10 royal mysteries, still unsolved, still waiting in the dark, from a boy king's tomb that killed everyone who opened it, to a queen whose body vanished beneath the waves and was never found. From an emperor's chamber sealed for 2,000 years because no one dares break it open, to princes who died mysteriously in a locked tower. Tonight, we're reopening 10 unsolved cases that history still can't crack. Before we begin, hit subscribe so you never miss our journey into history's darkest corners. And drop a comment below. Where are you listening from, and what time is it? Is it late in London? Or midnight in Manhattan? Now, let's find out what's hiding in the shadows, where the truth remains buried and the questions refuse to sleep. Something is sleeping under the Egyptian desert. It's been there for over 3,000 years. And when they finally open it in 1922, people start dying. Let me set the scene. It's November 1922. The place is a desolate valley in Egypt, where ancient kings were buried in secret tombs carved into solid rock. Treasure hunters have been ransacking this place for centuries, and most people think there's nothing left to find. But a British archaeologist named Howard Carter refuses to give up. He's been digging in the sand for years, and his wealthy sponsor, Lord Carnarvon, is about to pull the plug on the whole operation. Then Carter's team hits something. A stone step, then another, then 12 more, leading down into the bedrock. At the bottom, there's a sealed doorway. Carter makes a tiny hole in the ancient plaster and peers through with a candle. Behind him, Carnarvon can barely contain himself. "Can you see anything?" Carter's voice comes back, shaking. "Yes." "Wonderful things." What they find inside changes everything we know about ancient Egypt. A tomb, completely intact, untouched by thieves for 32 centuries. 4 rooms crammed with golden furniture, jeweled chariots, precious oils, weapons, clothing, and at the center of it all, a solid gold coffin. Inside that coffin? A mummy wearing a death mask made of 11 kilograms of solid gold, inlaid with precious stones. The face of a teenage boy, eyes lined with black paint, frozen in eternal serenity. His name is Tutankhamun. He's been dead since 1323 BC, and nobody has the slightest clue how he died. But here's where this story gets properly weird. Because a lot of people who go into that tomb, they don't make it out alive. Well, they make it out, but then they die. Horribly, mysteriously, one by one. Let me back up and tell you about the boy himself first. The year is 1332 BC. Somewhere in an Egyptian palace, a 9-year-old kid wakes up and is told he's now a living god. Not sort of a god, not like a god, actually divine. The earthly embodiment of Horus, the falcon-headed sky deity, son of the sun god Ra. Except this particular god has some problems. He's got a club foot, which means he walks with a cane. His spine is curved. He's got malaria. And oh yeah, he's 9 years old and has absolutely no idea how to run an empire that stretches from modern-day Syria to Sudan. Around him, powerful men circle like sharks. There's I, the royal vizier, basically the prime minister, a man whose smile never quite reaches his eyes. There's Horemheb, a military general whose patience is infinite, but whose ambition might be even greater. Young Tutankhamun is also cleaning up his father's mess. His dad, Pharaoh Akhenaten, had done something absolutely mental. He'd shut down all the temples to Egypt's traditional gods, the ones people had worshipped for thousands of years, and declared that everyone had to worship only one god, Aten, the sun disk. This goes down about as well as you'd imagine. The priests are furious, the people are confused, the gods presumably are not thrilled. So little Tutankhamun inherits a crown, a cane, and absolute religious chaos. He's supposed to be all-powerful, the living link between heaven and earth. In reality, he's a sick child being used as a puppet by men 3 times his age. He rules for about 10 years. Then, at 19 years old, he dies. Here's what we know. Tutankhamun is alive one day and dead the next. No long illness, no public decline, just gone. Here's what we don't know. Basically everything else. Modern CT scans of his mummy show a badly broken leg that got infected. Some historians think he fell from a chariot. Others reckon he was injured in battle or maybe even a hunting accident. But a few historians whisper something darker. That the leg wasn't an accident at all. That someone with access to the pharaoh wanted him gone. That murder was dressed up as misfortune. We'll never know for sure. But here's what is genuinely strange. The burial is rushed. Like really rushed. The ritual oils that are poured over the mummy are still sticky when they seal the tomb. The wax seals are smudged and uneven, like someone did them in a hurry. And the tomb itself? It's tiny, way too small for a pharaoh. Most experts think it was originally meant for someone else, someone far less important, and they just shoved Tutankhamun in there because they needed to bury him fast. Why the rush? Good question. 3,000 years later, we're still asking. Now let's talk about the curse. Lord Carnarvon, the posh English aristocrat who funded the whole expedition, is absolutely buzzing after they open the tomb. This is the archaeological discovery of the century. He's going to be famous. Rich. Legendary. 4 months later, he's dead. A mosquito bite on his cheek gets infected. The infection spreads to his blood, and he dies in a Cairo hotel room, raving with fever. The exact moment he dies, every light in Cairo goes out, simultaneously, for no explained reason. Also, back at his estate in England, his dog howls, collapses, and dies. At the exact same moment. I'm not making this up. Then other people connected to the tomb start dropping. Carnarvon's half-brother, dead. An American financier who visited the tomb, dead. A British industrialist who helped fund the dig, dead. The radiologist who x-rayed the mummy, dead within a year. Oh, and Carter's pet canary, the little bird he kept for company during lonely desert nights. It gets eaten by a cobra the day they open the tomb. A cobra, the sacred symbol of Egyptian royalty. You couldn't make it more ominous if you tried. The newspapers go absolutely wild. "Curse of the Pharaohs," scream the headlines. "Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the peace of the king." 22 people directly connected to the opening of the tomb die within the first decade. 22. Now, before you start Googling how to avoid ancient curses, let's be rational for a second. Howard Carter himself, the guy who actually opened the tomb and spent more time with the mummy than anyone, lives until 1939. He dies at 64, which is pretty good going for the 1930s, not exactly cursed. Scientists have perfectly reasonable explanations for the deaths. Tombs sealed for thousands of years can contain bacteria and toxic mold spores that mess with your immune system. Combine that with 1920s medical care, a bit of statistical coincidence, and newspaper editors who love a spooky story, and you've got yourself a curse. But still, the whispers never stop. Because there's something we want to believe. That some boundaries shouldn't be crossed. That the dead deserve peace. That if you disturb a pharaoh's eternal rest, something might disturb yours. Tutankhamun is fragile in life, forgotten by history, and barely leaves a mark on his own time. But in death he becomes immortal. Not because of what he did, but because of what he left behind. A tomb that survived when all others were plundered. a golden mask that stopped the world in its tracks, a mystery that still won't let us look away. 3,000 years later, he's the most famous pharaoh who ever lived, and we still don't know who killed him, or if anyone did. But here's the thing about Egypt's royal mysteries. At least with Tutankhamun, we found the tomb. We found the body. We have something to study, to scan, to debate over. But what happens when the royal person vanishes completely? When a queen so powerful she seduced Julius Caesar and commanded the navies of Rome just disappears? No tomb, no body, no grave to mark where she fell. Just stories that won't die and a Mediterranean sea that's keeping secrets. For 2,000 years, archaeologists have been searching, digging through Alexandria's ruins, diving beneath the waves, following ancient maps and modern theories, and they've found nothing. She ruled an empire, spoke 9 languages, and changed the course of Western civilization. Then she died, and the desert swallowed her whole. Where do you even begin looking for a queen who left no trace? And that's only the beginning. If you're still here, wide awake and maybe a little unsettled, you're exactly our kind of listener. Go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already, so you don't miss what's still lurking down this royal rabbit hole. And tell us in the comments, where are you tuning in from, and what time is it where you are? Are you listening at breakfast in Berlin, or bundled up at bedtime in Buenos Aires? We won't judge. We're right here with you. Number 2. Cleopatra VII, the queen who vanished beneath the sands. Her empire is gone, her palaces are underwater, and her body? Nobody has a clue. For 2,000 years, archaeologists have torn apart Egypt looking for her. They've dug through ruins, dived into the Mediterranean, followed every ancient map and wild theory they could find. Nothing. Not a bone, not a tomb, not even a whisper of where she might be. She's the most famous queen in history, and she's pulled off the ultimate disappearing act. This is Cleopatra VII, and somehow the woman who seduced Julius Caesar and commanded Rome's navy has vanished more completely than any pharaoh buried in the desert. Let me introduce you properly. And no, despite what Hollywood keeps telling you, she wasn't Egyptian. Plot twist. She was Greek. The year is 69 BC. Cleopatra is born into the Ptolemy family, a dynasty of Greek rulers who'd been running Egypt ever since one of Alexander the Great's generals decided Egypt looked nice and set up shop there 3 centuries earlier. Think of them as ancient Greece's most successful franchise operation. They speak Greek at court, worship Greek gods, and basically treat Egypt like the world's most profitable holiday villa. Cleopatra takes this further than anyone. She's the first Ptolemy in 300 years who actually bothers to learn Egyptian. Not just hello and where's the bathroom. Properly fluent, along with 8 other languages. Here's what everyone gets wrong about Cleopatra. Ancient writers don't bang on about her looks. They bang on about her brain. One Roman historian literally describes her beauty as not incomparable, which is ancient speak for she was all right, nothing special. Ouch. But her conversation, her intelligence, absolutely devastating. She's not winning over the most powerful men in the world because she looks good in eyeliner. She's winning them over because she's the smartest person in any room she enters. Now, Egypt in the 1st century BC is having a full-blown crisis. The Ptolemies have been marrying each other for 3 centuries straight. By the time Cleopatra arrives, her family tree doesn't branch. It's basically a wreath. The kingdom is bankrupt. Rome is circling like a shark. And when Cleopatra's father dies in 51 BC, 18-year-old Cleopatra inherits the throne alongside her 10-year-old brother, Ptolemy XIII. Oh right, did I mention she has to marry her brother? Because that's what Ptolemies do. Her brother's advisors don't fancy being ruled by a smart woman with opinions, so they stage a coup and boot her out of Alexandria. Most people would accept defeat. Cleopatra raises an army. While she's plotting her comeback, Julius Caesar arrives in Egypt chasing his rival, Pompey the Great. Cleopatra's brother's advisors murder Pompey and present his severed head to Caesar as a welcome gift. Caesar is absolutely horrified. You don't just chop people's heads off like it's a dinner party centerpiece. So now Caesar is in Alexandria, furious with everyone, and Cleopatra sees her chance. She needs to get into the palace to meet Caesar, but if she tries the front door, her brother's people will murder her. So she has herself smuggled inside, rolled up in a carpet. Picture this. You're Julius Caesar, the most powerful man on earth, sitting in a palace you've just taken over, probably tired and annoyed about the whole severed head situation. Someone delivers a rug. The rug unrolls, and out tumbles the exiled Queen of Egypt. Probably dizzy and covered in carpet fluff, smiling like this is completely normal behavior. Caesar is immediately charmed. After weeks of incompetent murderers, Cleopatra is a breath of fresh air who can actually hold a conversation. They become lovers. Caesar backs her claim. Her brother conveniently dies in battle. 9 months later, Cleopatra has a son. She names him Caesarion, Little Caesar, just in case anyone was unclear about who the father was. Everything is perfect. Then, in 44 BC, Julius Caesar gets stabbed 23 times by senators who think he's getting too powerful. Cleopatra's world collapses overnight. But she's not done yet. Rome descends into another civil war, this time between Octavian, Caesar's teenage heir, and Mark Antony, Caesar's best mate. Mark Antony summons Cleopatra to Turkey. He needs her money and Egypt's grain. Cleopatra could turn up like a normal person. Instead, she arrives in a golden barge with purple sails, dressed as Venus, the goddess of love. Incense burning, musicians playing. She's announcing without words, "I'm not here to be judged, I'm here to be worshipped." Mark Antony doesn't stand a chance. They rule the Eastern Mediterranean together. They have 3 children. Cleopatra literally gives Antony entire kingdoms as birthday presents. Meanwhile, back in Rome, Octavian is painting Cleopatra as an evil foreign seductress who's corrupted a good Roman general. In 31 BC, it comes to a head at the Battle of Actium off the coast of Greece. When it becomes clear they're losing, Cleopatra's ships flee. Antony abandons his entire fleet and follows her. It's either the most romantic gesture in history or the worst military decision ever made. Probably both. Back in Alexandria, they both know it's over. Antony hears false reports that Cleopatra is dead. Devastated, broken, he draws his sword and drives it into his own body. The blade finds its mark, but death doesn't come quickly. He's bleeding, gasping, still conscious enough to realize his mistake when he learns the truth. Cleopatra is alive. She's in the mausoleum, waiting. His soldiers carry him there, up the stone steps, through the sealed doors, into the chamber where Cleopatra watches the man she loves collapse into her arms, his tunic already soaked with blood. There's no time for final words, no grand speech, just the sound of his breathing growing shallower, and her holding him as the life drains away. It's August, 30 BC. Cleopatra is now alone, surrounded by Octavian's soldiers just beyond those sealed doors. She's 39 years old, and she knows exactly what comes next. Octavian will drag her back to Rome in chains, parade her through the streets, then strangle her in a prison cell after the show. Cleopatra has spent her entire life refusing to be anyone's trophy. She's not starting now. On August 12th, 30 BC, she's found dead in her mausoleum. She's lying on a golden couch, dressed in full royal regalia, wearing her crown. 2 loyal servants are dead beside her. No blood, no wounds, no violence. She just looks asleep. Ancient writers claim a venomous snake was smuggled in, hidden in a basket of figs. The story is perfect, dramatic, poetic. It's also probably rubbish. No one saw a snake, and aspivenom causes a slow, agonizing death with convulsions. Cleopatra looked peaceful. More likely. She used a poison she'd been testing for years on condemned prisoners. Quick, painless, leaves no trace. Very on-brand for someone who planned everything. Octavian allows her to be buried beside Mark Antony. Ancient writers say the tomb was near the Temple of Isis in Alexandria, somewhere magnificent and worthy of Egypt's last queen. And then Alexandria started sinking, not all at once, gradually, over centuries. Earthquakes, tsunamis, rising sea levels. The ancient city slipped beneath the Mediterranean, and her tomb went with it. Modern archaeologists have been obsessed with finding it for over a century. They've discovered coins with her face, statues, entire submerged palaces, but no tomb. Some think it's underwater now, buried under sand and coral somewhere off Alexandria's coast. Others believe it's still out there on land, waiting for someone clever enough to find it. There's a site called Taposiris Magna, about 45 kilometers west of Alexandria, where archaeologist Kathleen Martinez has been digging for years. She's found tunnels, coins, pottery, a massive temple complex. She's convinced Cleopatra is down there somewhere. But so far, nothing. It's been over 2,000 years, and the most famous queen in history is still missing. Here's what gets me about Cleopatra's story. She spent her life being underestimated. Roman writers called her a seductress who corrupted good Roman men with exotic charms. But she wasn't dangerous because she was beautiful. She was dangerous because she was brilliant. She saw that Rome was the future, and Egypt had to adapt or die. She played the game better than almost anyone, and nearly won against impossible odds. And maybe that's why we can't find her, because powerful women who refuse to play by the rules aren't supposed to exist. So history made sure even her bones disappeared. But here's the thing. She won anyway. 2,000 years later, everyone knows Cleopatra. Octavian had to rebrand himself as Augustus because nobody remembers boring old Octavian. Shakespeare wrote plays about her. Hollywood made films about her. Little girls dress up as her. She's the one who became immortal. The Mediterranean keeps her secret. Archaeologists keep searching. Maybe one day someone will find that tomb. Maybe they'll discover Cleopatra still there, crown on her head, exactly as she planned. Or maybe she'll stay lost forever, which would be very fitting for a woman who spent her life being impossible to pin down. But while Egypt and Rome were fighting over the Mediterranean, something far more ambitious was happening half a world away. An emperor in China wasn't just planning his tomb. He was building an entire underground kingdom, a palace with rivers of liquid mercury, an army of 8,000 clay soldiers, traps designed to kill anyone who dared enter, and a secret so dangerous that 2,000 years later, nobody has dared to break the seal. Some mysteries hide in the sea, others hide beneath a mountain, waiting in the dark. Number 3. Qin Shi Huang, the emperor who would live forever. We've seen a pharaoh's curse that haunted those who disturbed his rest. We've walked beside a queen who vanished beneath the waves. But now, we turn to something far more ambitious. An emperor who didn't just accept death. He declared war on it. In the heart of China, beneath a green hill that looks like any other, lies a tomb so vast and so dangerous that after 2,000 years, no one has dared to open it. Inside, they say, are rivers of liquid mercury flowing through an underground palace. Crossbow traps still armed and waiting. And an army of 8,000 clay soldiers standing eternal guard. The man who built it wanted to live forever. He failed. But his tomb might genuinely kill you. so perhaps he succeeded in a different way. This is the story of the emperor who tried to conquer death itself. The year is 246 BC. In the kingdom of Qin, a 13-year-old boy named Ying Zheng becomes king. China isn't one country yet. It's 7 warring kingdoms tearing each other apart in an endless cycle of violence. Most 13-year-olds are still learning how the world works. This boy is about to reshape it. By 20, he's conquering neighboring states. By 38, he's done something no one in Chinese history has ever achieved. He unites all 7 warring kingdoms under a single rule. He doesn't just become another king, he invents an entirely new title, Huangdi, Emperor. And because he's the first to ever hold it, he names himself Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of Qin. Here's what makes him remarkable. He standardizes the written language so every corner of his new empire can communicate. He creates a single currency to bind the economy together. He builds roads connecting distant provinces. He links old defensive walls into one continuous barrier that will eventually become the Great Wall of China. He transforms chaos into order, 7 fractured kingdoms into one unified empire. But he's also terrified, because the one thing his absolute power cannot control is time. And time, as it does for everyone, is running out. Most rulers build monuments to their glory. Qin Shi Huang builds something far stranger. The moment he becomes emperor at 13, he begins constructing his tomb, not just a burial chamber, an entire underground kingdom meant to mirror the world above. Ancient historians describe a palace complex buried beneath Mount Li, a ceiling studded with pearls to represent the stars, rivers and seas filled with mercury to represent the waters of China, their currents maintained by mechanical pumps even after death. The tomb is protected by crossbow traps designed to automatically fire at intruders, because even in death, the emperor refuses to be vulnerable. He spends 37 years building this subterranean empire. Hundreds of thousands of workers carve chambers into the mountain. Craftsmen create treasures that no living eye will ever see. And when the construction is finally complete, Qin Shi Huang gives one final chilling order. Every worker who knows the location of the inner burial chamber is sealed inside the tomb, alive. The same hands that built his path to eternity are buried within it. The secret of its layout dies with them, trapped behind doors that will never open from the inside. But building an elaborate tomb isn't enough for Qin Shi Huang. He doesn't want a comfortable death. He wants no death at all. He becomes obsessed with immortality. He sends expeditions of hundreds of people to sail east, searching for mythical islands where immortals supposedly dwell. Most of these ships vanish into the ocean. The islands, if they ever existed, remain forever out of reach. He consults alchemists who promise they can brew elixirs of eternal life. These men claim to possess ancient secrets, formulas passed down through generations. They give him pills made of mercury. They tell him it's purified starlight, that it will transform his mortal body into something divine, something eternal. Here's what mercury actually does to the human body. It destroys you from the inside. It causes tremors, paranoia, organ failure. It's a slow, agonizing poison. The substance Qin Shi Huang takes to avoid death is the very thing killing him. The irony is almost unbearable. By his late 40s, the emperor is likely suffering from mercury poisoning, growing paranoid, suspicious of everyone around him, convinced of plots that may or may not exist. In 210 BC, while traveling through the eastern provinces, Qin Shi Huang dies. He's 49 years old. The elixir of life has become a recipe for death. What happens next is genuinely bizarre. His closest advisors panic. If news of the emperor's death spreads, the empire could collapse into rebellion before his successor is secured. So they make a decision that borders on madness. They hide his death. They place his body in his traveling carriage and continue the journey as if nothing has happened. They deliver false orders in his name. They tell everyone the emperor is merely resting and doesn't wish to be disturbed. But there's a problem they haven't considered. It's the middle of summer in China, and the emperor's body, sealed inside that carriage, begins to decay. The smell of death starts seeping through the curtains. So the advisors fill the carriage with rotting fish, hoping the stench will mask what's really happening inside. The historical records genuinely document this. A carriage rolling through the countryside, reeking of spoiled fish, while courtiers bow to a corpse they're all pretending is simply sleeping. They maintain this grotesque charade for weeks until they finally reach the capital and can announce his death. The emperor's body is placed in the tomb he spent nearly 4 decades building. The doors are sealed, the workers are entombed with him, and there it remains, for over 2,000 years. In 1974, farmers digging a well near a village called Lintong strike something hard with their shovels. They assume it's rock, or perhaps an old foundation. It's neither. They've uncovered a clay head, attached to a life-sized clay body, holding a clay weapon, standing in perfect military formation. They've discovered the terracotta army. 8,000 clay soldiers emerge from the earth, each one unique, each face individually sculpted. Archers, infantry, cavalry, generals. An entire army crafted to guard the emperor in death just as living soldiers guarded him in life. The discovery stuns the archaeological world. But here's what makes it even more extraordinary. The army isn't the tomb itself. The army is standing guard over something. About a mile away, ground-penetrating radar reveals something enormous beneath the earth. A massive underground complex. Multiple chambers, structural anomalies that match exactly what ancient historians described. And mercury. Soil samples show mercury levels hundreds of times higher than normal background levels. The ancient writers weren't exaggerating. The rivers of mercury are real, still there after 2 millennia, still toxic enough to kill anyone who breathes the vapor. So here's the question that haunts modern archaeology. Why hasn't anyone opened the tomb? It's not a question of technology. We have the tools. We have the expertise. We could carefully excavate the chambers, preserve their contents, and finally see what Qin Shi Huang left behind. But China's government has made an official decision. The tomb remains sealed. Partly, it's about preservation. The moment air reaches those underground chambers, everything begins to deteriorate. Paint fades, fabrics crumble, wood rots. 2,000 years of perfect preservation could be destroyed in days. But there's another reason, one that archaeologists discuss quietly, almost reluctantly. What if the ancient historians were right about the traps? What if there really are crossbow mechanisms still armed after 2,000 years, ready to fire at whoever breaks the seal? What if the mercury concentration is so high that opening the tomb would release a toxic cloud capable of killing excavation teams? What if Qin Shi Huang succeeded in building a tomb that can still kill from beyond the grave? No one wants to be the person who finds out. So the tomb sits beneath Mount Li, untouched, waiting in the dark. The emperor who tried to defeat death created something that might be genuinely immortal. Not himself, his secret. A mystery so dangerous that even modern science won't dare to touch it. Here's what lingers about Qin Shi Huang's story. He was so terrified of death that he poisoned himself trying to prevent it. He was so desperate for immortality that he built a tomb that's lasted longer than most civilizations. He wanted to rule forever, and in a strange way he does. His clay army still stands guard, his tomb still sits sealed, his mystery still captivates us. Perhaps that's the truest form of immortality. Not living forever, but creating something the world cannot stop thinking about. A secret so perfect that no one dares to solve it. The emperor died in 210 BC, but his tomb might genuinely last forever. And somewhere in the darkness beneath that green hill, surrounded by rivers of mercury and 8,000 silent soldiers, maybe Qin Shi Huang achieved exactly what he wanted after all. China guards one royal mystery beneath a mountain, sealed and untouchable. But in Egypt, mysteries don't hide behind doors. They vanish completely. We searched for Cleopatra and found nothing. But there's another Egyptian queen whose disappearance might be even stranger. A woman whose face became the most recognized image in all of ancient Egypt. A queen who ruled beside a heretic pharaoh and then disappeared so thoroughly that historians still argue about where she went. Some archaeologists believe they know exactly where her tomb is hidden. They just can't prove it yet. The woman with the most famous face in Egyptian history remains one of Egypt's most maddening mysteries. And the search for her has lasted a century. Number 4. Nefertiti, the forgotten face of a queen. Her face is everywhere. Museums, textbooks, that one poster your friend had in university. She's probably the most recognizable woman from ancient Egypt. That elegant limestone bust with the tall blue crown, those perfectly lined eyes staring through 33 centuries like she knows something you don't. Except, here's the thing. We have absolutely no idea what happened to her. She just vanishes. Poof! Gone. One of the most powerful women in Egyptian history simply disappears from the historical record like she was never there at all. No tomb, no mummy, no explanation. It's as if someone went through ancient Egypt with a giant eraser and just rubbed her out. Let me introduce you properly to the woman behind that famous face. The year is 1350 BC, Egypt is at the height of its power, and Nefertiti rules beside Pharaoh Akhenaten as his great royal wife. Her name literally means, "the beautiful one has come," which is either incredibly confident or someone's mum really rated her own baby. But here's where things get properly weird. Akhenaten isn't your standard pharaoh. Most Egyptian rulers are happy to worship the traditional gods. Ra, Osiris, Anubis, the whole pantheon. It's worked for thousands of years. Why mess with it? Akhenaten takes one look at this system and decides, nope, we're burning it all down. He closes the temples, sacks the priests, and announces that from now on, Egypt will worship only one god. Aten, the sun disk, just a big glowing circle in the sky. This goes down about as well as you'd imagine. The priests are furious. The people are confused. The gods, presumably, are taking notes. It's religious revolution, Egyptian style, and Nefertiti is right there beside him, backing every single decision. Together, they build a brand new capital city called Akhetaten, the horizon of the Aten. It's basically a purpose-built religious theme park in the middle of nowhere. And here's what's remarkable about Nefertiti. In the art from this period, she's not just shown as the pharaoh's wife standing demurely behind him. She's carved the same size as Akhenaten, sometimes larger. She's shown smiting enemies, which is usually reserved for pharaohs. She's not playing the traditional royal wife role. She's playing pharaoh. Some historians think she was co-regent, ruling alongside Akhenaten as an equal. Others reckon she might have ruled alone after he died, possibly under a different name. But we can't be sure, because around year 12 of Akhenaten's reign, something happens. Nefertiti disappears. Not died, not buried, just gone. Her name stops appearing in inscriptions. Her images are defaced. It's like someone hit delete on one of the most powerful women in Egypt. So what happened? Theory 1. She died. Plague, childbirth, accident. Something mundane and tragic. She was buried, and her tomb was either lost or deliberately destroyed when Egypt's priests came back to power and erased all trace of Akhenaten's religious revolution. Theory 2. She fell out of favor. Maybe she disagreed with Akhenaten's increasingly bonkers religious policies. Maybe she was exiled or shoved aside for a younger wife. Theory 3, and this is where it gets properly interesting. She didn't disappear at all. She changed her name. There's a mysterious pharaoh who pops up right around the time Nefertiti vanishes. Nefertiti, or possibly Smenkhkare, depending on which historian you ask. The records are an absolute mess. Some Egyptologists are convinced this mystery pharaoh is actually Nefertiti ruling under a different name. Perhaps after Akhenaten died or became too ill to rule. It would explain why she vanishes. She didn't go anywhere. She just rebranded. Very modern, when you think about it. After Akhenaten's death, Egypt basically pretends the whole sun-worshipping experiment never happened. The priests of Amun storm back into power. The old gods reclaim their temples, and anyone associated with Akhenaten's revolution gets comprehensively erased. His city is abandoned, his monuments are dismantled, his name is chiseled off walls, and Nefertiti, who stood beside him through it all, gets erased too. The irony is almost painful. The woman with the most famous face in ancient Egypt was deliberately forgotten by her own people. Fast forward to December 6th, 1912. A German archaeological team is excavating the ruins of Akhetaten, now called Amarna. In the workshop of an ancient sculptor named Thutmose, they find something extraordinary. A limestone bust, painted in vivid colors. A woman wearing a tall blue crown, her face serene and impossibly elegant. One eye inlaid with quartz, the other missing, perhaps never finished. It's Nefertiti, perfectly preserved, staring at them like she's been waiting 3,000 years for someone to finally notice her. The bust becomes an instant sensation. It tours the world. It becomes the face of ancient Egypt. But the woman herself? Still missing. Modern archaeologists have been obsessed with finding her tomb for over a century. Some think it's hidden somewhere in the royal tombs at Amarna. Others believe it's in the Valley of the Kings, perhaps near or even inside Tutankhamun's tomb. In 2015, British Egyptologist Nicholas Reeves proposed a wild theory. He examined high-resolution scans of Tutankhamun's burial chamber and noticed something odd. The walls look like they've been plastered over. What if there are hidden chambers behind them? What if Tutankhamun's tomb was actually meant for someone else and they just shoved him in the antechamber? What if Nefertiti is behind that wall, sleeping in the dark, exactly where she's been for 33 centuries? Ground-penetrating radar showed possible voids behind the painted walls. The archaeological world held its breath. Then further tests were inconclusive. Debate raged. Permission to open the walls was denied, so we still don't know. Maybe she's there. Maybe she's somewhere else entirely. Maybe her tomb was robbed thousands of years ago, and we'll never find her. She was powerful enough to rule beside a pharaoh, bold enough to back a religious revolution that turned Egypt upside down, important enough that her face was carved into temples across the kingdom. Then, when that revolution failed, the priests made absolutely certain she'd be forgotten. They chiseled away her name, destroyed her monuments, erased her from history. But they failed, because in 1912, someone found her face. And now millions of people know exactly what she looked like. She's on postcards, in museums, in textbooks around the world. That calm, knowing expression. Those perfect cheekbones. That tall blue crown. The priests tried to erase her. Instead, they made her immortal. Nefertiti's still winning, 33 centuries later. even if we have absolutely no idea where she's sleeping. Egypt's mysteries hide beneath sand and stone, waiting for archaeologists with theories and ground-penetrating radar. But on the other side of the world, in the palaces of Mughal India, mysteries don't hide underground. They vanish into legend, a throne made of rubies and gold, a seat of power so magnificent it glowed like fire in the dark, built for an emperor who ruled an empire of poets, spies, and impossible wealth. Then one day the throne disappeared, every gem scattered, every record incomplete. And to this day, nobody knows where it went. Number 5. Jahangir, the throne of blood and rubies. In 1627, the most valuable object in the Mughal Empire simply ceases to exist. No theft, no war, no fire. A throne made of rubies and gold, too heavy for 10 men to lift, just vanishes. One day it's there, glowing in the palace at Agra. The next morning, it's gone. And nobody, not the emperor's guards, not his advisors, not even his own son who inherits the throne, will say what happened to it. For 4 centuries, historians have been searching. They've torn through palace records, examined inventories, followed rumors across 3 continents. Nothing. Not a single ruby. Not one documented sale. Not even a reliable description of where it went. It's as if the throne decided to disappear itself. But here's what makes this genuinely strange. People were terrified of that throne long before it vanished. Courtiers whispered that it was cursed, that every emperor who sat on it watched his sons turn against him, that the rubies themselves seemed to pulse in the candlelight, like something living. Some claimed the gold was tainted from the beginning. Blood money, quite literally, melted down from tributes paid by kingdoms Jahangir had crushed. And Jahangir, the man who owned it? He sat on that throne for 22 years, and every single one of his sons tried to kill him. Let me introduce you to the emperor himself. The year is 1605. Jahangir, whose name literally means conqueror of the world, takes the throne of the Mughal Empire. This isn't some dusty medieval kingdom. This is an empire stretching from Afghanistan to the Bay of Bengal, absolutely drowning in wealth. We're talking palaces where the fountains run with rosewater, where the walls are inlaid with precious stones, where even the servants' quarters have better decor than most European castles. Jahangir loves beauty, obsessively. He collects paintings, breeds exotic animals, designs gardens that take years to complete. He records every flower, every sunset, every perfect moment, as if he can somehow trap beauty in words and make it last forever. But beauty, as it turns out, doesn't protect you from your own family. Among all his treasures, one object stands apart: the throne. Ancient descriptions call it a seat that could outshine the sun. Gold filigree so delicate it looked like frozen lace. Rubies the size of eggs, cut to catch every flicker of light. Emeralds that seemed to glow from within. It wasn't just furniture. It was a statement. Sit here, and you're not just an emperor. You're somewhere between heaven and earth. Untouchable. Divine. Except Jahangir never seems untouchable. He seems terrified. His oldest son, Khusrau, rebels in 1606, raises an army, tries to take the throne by force. Jahangir crushes the rebellion, then does something absolutely brutal. He has Khusrau's supporters impaled on stakes along the road and forces his son to walk past them. 800 men, dying slowly, while Khusrau watches. It's a message to anyone else thinking of rebellion. But here's the thing about ruling through terror. You can never stop, because the moment you show weakness, someone's coming for you. His second son, Khurram, you might know him better as Shah Jahan, waits patiently for years, playing the loyal son, until he's not. In 1622, Khurram rebels, tries to seize power while his father's still breathing. By 1627, when Jahangir finally dies, he's spent 2 decades watching his own children circle him like sharks, waiting for him to weaken, waiting for their chance. And through it all, he sits on that throne, the one people say brings nothing but sorrow. There's one person Jahangir seems to actually trust, his wife, Nur Jahan. She's Persian-born, whip-smart, and basically runs the empire alongside him. She's got her own coins minted with her face on them, her own court, her own political network. Some historians think she's the real power behind the throne, that Jahangir's so addicted to opium and wine by this point that he's barely functioning, and Nur Jahan is quietly running the show, which makes everyone else at court absolutely furious, obviously. When Jahangir dies in 1627, possibly from drinking too much, possibly from opium, possibly from just being exhausted by his own paranoid life, the succession gets messy. Shah Jahan eventually takes control. He's the one who later builds the Taj Mahal, so clearly he's got a flair for the dramatic. But here's where everything goes sideways. The throne disappears. Now you'd think something that massive and that valuable would be hard to misplace, but the historical record just goes quiet. Some historians claim it was reborn as the famous Peacock Throne, that legendary seat of power that Shah Jahan supposedly commissioned. Maybe he melted down his father's cursed throne and built something new. Others think it was deliberately destroyed, that Shah Jahan looked at what sitting on that throne had done to his father, watched his own brothers turn into enemies, his sons plotting in the shadows, and decided the throne itself was the problem. So he had it broken apart, every ruby pried loose, every gold panel melted down, scattered across the empire so it could never curse another generation. There's a darker theory, that Nur Jahan hid it, that she knew whoever controlled the throne controlled the empire, so she made it vanish to protect her own position during the succession crisis. And then there are the people who claim it's still out there, somewhere, buried in a forgotten vault beneath Lahore or Agra, its rubies still glowing in the dark, waiting for someone to find it. But here's what's genuinely eerie. Not a single piece has ever surfaced. Not one ruby in a market, not one gold panel in a collection. Nothing. For an object that famous, that valuable, to vanish so completely. That doesn't happen by accident. Someone wanted it gone, really gone. Jahangir's story is a reminder that beauty and violence often share the same gold frame. Every ruby in that throne was bought with blood. Every emerald represented a kingdom crushed. He wanted to surround himself with perfect things because his life was chaos. Sons who wanted him dead, a wife he couldn't fully trust, an empire that felt like it was slipping through his fingers no matter how tightly he held on. Maybe that's why the throne had to disappear, because it was never really about the jewels. It was about what they represented. Power so absolute, it destroys everyone who touches it. Some say if you stand in the right courtyard in Lahore at dawn, you can still see the imprint in the marble where the throne once stood. A shadow that won't fade, no matter how bright the sun gets. The old families who still live near the palace don't talk about it. When foreign archaeologists come asking questions, they just shake their heads and walk away, as if some secrets are better left buried. But across the Indian Ocean, on an island wrapped in mist and rain, another throne was about to witness something far stranger than a disappearing chair. A ruler who made death itself seem like a mercy, who turned an entire kingdom into a prison, whose palace still breathes at night, though nobody lives there anymore. They say she never really died, that she's still there, walking those halls, waiting. And the people who live nearby? They won't go near the palace after dark. Not even now. Number 6. Ranavalona I, the queen who wouldn't die. On the red island of Madagascar, where mist hides the hills and rain never quite stops, one palace still breathes. High on a ridge above Antananarivo stands the Rover Palace. Black stone, red earth, and the soft sound of rain that's been falling for centuries. At night, people claim they see faint lights flickering in its windows. Even though nobody lives there. Even though nobody's supposed to be inside. Some call it the most haunted place in Africa. The Red Cross tried to use it as a hospital in 1947. The staff quit within a week. They wouldn't say why. The palace belonged to a queen named Ranavalona, and in 1861, after 33 years of absolute terror, she went to sleep and never woke up. No poison, no wound, no mark on her body at all. She simply stopped breathing, as if death itself had finally worked up the courage to take her. 3 of the servants who found her body died within the month. Natural causes, supposedly. The palace has been trying to tell us something ever since. It's the 19th century, an age when European empires are spreading across the globe like wildfire, colonizing everything they touch. But one island queen looks at the British and French fleets approaching her shores and says, "Absolutely not." The year is 1828. King Radama I dies suddenly. According to tradition and law, the throne should pass to his nephew. A smooth, orderly succession. Except something impossible happens overnight. Before dawn, the gates of the capital seal shut. Armed guards appear at every entrance. The nephew, along with everyone who supported his claim, vanishes. Not fled, not in hiding. Vanished. By sunrise, the royal drums are beating a new name. Ranavalona. Nobody sees it coming. She's the king's first wife, but she has absolutely no direct claim to the throne. Malagasy succession doesn't work that way. Yet somehow, by morning, she's eliminated every rival and she's wearing the crown. Years later, one of the vanished nephew's guards will claim he saw her standing in the throne room the night before, alone in the dark, lips moving in silence, praying to something, or bargaining with it. How does a woman with no claim take a throne in a single night and make every obstacle disappear? She never explains, and nobody dares to ask. Ranavalona promises to guard Madagascar from foreign influence, to preserve the old ways, to keep the island's sovereignty intact. Noble goals on paper. In practice? She takes the throne like someone drowning grabbing a rope. And for the next 33 years, she holds on with both hands, absolutely terrified to let go. Courtiers who displease her vanish. Rivals disappear into the stone foundations of the rover itself. Foreign missionaries, who'd been welcomed under the previous king, are expelled. Or worse. There are stories, whispered in the capital even now, of tunnels beneath the palace. Secret passages where people were taken and never seen again. No trials, no records, no graves. Just silence. Elders still warn their children never to walk near certain doors in the old city after dark. The ones that lead underground. The ones that were sealed generations ago, but still seem to breathe cold air on humid nights. In the 1950s, a French engineer tried to map the tunnel system. He made it 30 meters in before turning back. He wouldn't discuss what he'd seen. Within a year, he'd left Madagascar and never returned. The tunnels remain sealed. But the thing that truly terrifies people, the Tangena trials. Here's what makes this genuinely strange. European missionaries claim Ranavalona killed millions through these poison ordeals. 2 million people. Maybe 3 million. But there are no Malagasy records. None. Either the greatest mass killing in African history happened, and nobody on the island documented it, or Europeans wildly exaggerated to make her look like a monster and justify future colonization. Both possibilities are terrifying. Here's how the Tangena ordeal works. You're accused of a crime, disloyalty, or sometimes just existing near the Queen on a bad day. You're forced to swallow poison made from the Tangena nut. Then you eat 3 pieces of chicken skin to try to make yourself vomit. If you throw up the poison and survive, innocent. The ancestors have spoken. If you die, guilty as charged. It's utterly medieval, except this is happening in the 1800s while Britain's building railways and America's having a gold rush. Did millions really die this way? Or did a few hundred deaths get multiplied into legend by horrified foreigners who needed a villain? The truth died with the witnesses. Perhaps the earth itself is the only thing that knows the real number. As Ranavalona ages, her fear grows with her. Servants are executed for whispers she thinks she hears. Ministers vanish mid-sentence, as if the floor just swallowed them whole. Even her own son, the heir to her throne, speaks only in riddles when he's near her, too terrified to say anything that might be misinterpreted. She calls upon ombiasi, spirit healers and diviners, to perform secret rituals, protection ceremonies that nobody outside the palace is allowed to witness. People who live near the rover at this time report seeing candles burning at odd hours, but the flames move wrong. They flicker backwards, as if time itself is reversing inside those walls. Witnesses speak of offerings made to ancestors at midnight, animal sacrifices, ceremonies designed to keep the dead on her side, because she understands something terrifying. She's not cruel because she loves death. She's cruel because she's absolutely paralyzed by the fear of it. Every execution, every trial, every disappeared rival is her trying to control the one thing she can't control. The fact that eventually, inevitably, death comes for everyone. Even queens who make deals in the dark. In 1861, after 33 years of bloodshed, the impossible happens. Ranavalona goes to bed one night, perfectly healthy as far as anyone can tell, and doesn't wake up. No poison, no wound, no sign of violence or illness. She's just gone. The city falls silent, not the peaceful kind of silence, the terrified kind. Dogs won't stop howling, birds won't land on the palace walls for 3 days, because nobody knows if it's safe to mourn, safe to celebrate, or if this is some kind of test and she's about to sit up and start ordering executions. Here's what's genuinely strange. No doctor examines the body. No official record is written. The Queen of Madagascar, one of the most powerful and feared rulers in African history, just stops existing, and nobody documents how or why. Some say her spirit was finally claimed by all the people she'd condemned, that they dragged her into the afterlife to answer for what she'd done. Others whisper that her servants poisoned her, that they'd been planning it for 33 years but were too afraid to admit it, even after she was dead. But then, why did 3 of them die within the month? Guilt? Coincidence? Or something else? It's the quietest night Madagascar has ever known. And it stays quiet. Her son, Radama II, takes the throne and immediately tries to erase her memory. He reopens Madagascar to foreigners, reverses her policies, welcomes back the missionaries, attempts to drag the island into modernity. Within 2 years, he's strangled with a silk scarf by his own nobles. They claim he was betraying Madagascar, that he was selling out to European powers. But some whisper it was her, reaching from the grave, that Madagascar would never be free of her shadow, no matter who sat on the throne, that she'd made sure of it before she died. Years turn to decades. The Red Island changes hands, colonized by France, then independent again. But people still claim to hear footsteps in the palace corridors. The distinctive creak of her sandals on stone floors, in rooms that have been empty for generations. Then, in 1995, something genuinely eerie happens. The Rover Palace catches fire. Flames tear through the wooden halls, but firefighters report something wrong. The fire is hottest in her old chambers, though the blaze started elsewhere, and the flames burn red. Not orange, red, like the fire knows exactly where to go. By morning, much of the palace complex is destroyed. The sky over Antananarivo had glowed blood red all night. No cause is ever officially confirmed. Electrical fault, maybe. Arson, possibly. But to the old families who still whisper Ranavalona's name, it wasn't an accident. It was her. Coming home. Even in ashes, her palace wouldn't rest. Ranavalona's story is a reminder that fear can rule as effectively as love, but the legacy it leaves behind is hollow. She controlled Madagascar through terror for 33 years. When she died, nobody mourned. Nobody celebrated either. They just waited to see if she'd actually stay dead. No one knows how many people she killed. No one knows what's in those sealed tunnels. No one knows what finally ended her reign, or if she ended it herself through some bargain we'll never understand. The locals near the rover still won't discuss her. When tourists ask questions, they just shake their heads and walk away faster, as if some secrets are better left sleeping. But on some nights, when thunder rolls across the Red Island and rain hammers the empty palace, people swear they see those lights again in the windows, flickering, moving from room to room. Maybe she became one of the ancestors herself, one of those spirits she spent her life trying to appease. Maybe the queen who ruled through death never really died at all. The rain returns. The palace sleeps again. For now. But thousands of miles away, in a palace gleaming with gold and marble, another death was about to happen that makes absolutely no sense. A young king, 19 years old, found dead in his locked bedroom with a bullet in his head and a gun beside him. Accident? Suicide? Murder? Nearly 80 years later, an entire nation still can't agree on the answer. And if you investigate too deeply, you might discover that some questions are dangerous to ask, even now. Number 7. King Ananda Mahidol, the bullet in the royal bed. It's a quiet Sunday morning in June 1946. The rain is gentle over Bangkok. The palace is still. The city has no idea that within an hour, Thailand will lose its king. When they find him, the air in the room hasn't moved. On the bedside table, a pistol gleams in the soft morning light. He's 20 years old. One bullet, one silence that's lasted nearly 80 years, and nobody can agree on how that bullet was fired. Or by whom? King Ananda Mahidol never chose his crown. He's born in Germany in 1925. His uncle, King Prajadhipok, abdicates in 1935 because he's fed up with politics and wants a quiet life in England. Fair enough. The throne needs an heir. They look around the family tree and land on a 9-year-old boy living in Switzerland. Ananda's just a kid. He's studying in Lausanne, speaking French and German, living a perfectly normal European childhood. Then someone shows up and says, "Congratulations, you're the King of Siam now. Pack your bags." He doesn't even speak Thai properly. For years he rules from Switzerland. On paper anyway. Regents handle the actual governing while he finishes school, because you can't exactly run a kingdom from boarding school. Then World War II happens. Japan occupies Thailand. Everything goes sideways. When the war finally ends in 1945, Ananda returns home for the first time as an adult. He's 20 years old. The country he's supposed to rule is a land he barely knows, divided by secrets and foreign occupation. To the Thai people, he's hope. A fresh start after years of war. To the court, he's uncertainty. a Swiss-educated boy who doesn't understand the old ways. To someone unseen, he might be a danger. June 9th, 1946, just after 9 o'clock in the morning. Servants hear what sounds like a book dropping. Then nothing. They wait. Royal protocol means you don't just barge into the king's bedroom. You wait to be summoned. But something feels wrong. When they finally enter, they find King Ananda lying in bed. A bullet wound above his left eye, his Colt .45 pistol resting beside him on the sheets. No witness, no note, no sound except that single shot, which apparently nobody clearly heard. Just a 20-year-old king, dead in a locked room, and questions that will haunt Thailand for generations. The government launches an investigation immediately. For years, theories multiply like shadows. Some say he was cleaning his gun, and it discharged accidentally. Tragic, but simple. Others whisper about political conspiracy. That powerful people wanted him gone before he could consolidate real power. A few speak quietly about foreign agents, the Americans, the British, someone who didn't want Thailand leaning the wrong way in the new post-war world. The investigation drags on for years. They need someone to blame, someone to punish. 3 of the king's attendants are eventually tried and executed. 2 pages and a secretary. But here's the problem. The evidence is murky. The testimonies don't quite add up. Some historians believe these men were scapegoats, sacrificed to give the public an answer when the real answer was too dangerous to speak aloud. The trial lasts years, but nobody walks away satisfied. Outside, rain washes over Bangkok again and again. The same rain that fell the morning he died. King Ananda's younger brother, Bhumibol, takes the throne soon after. He'll rule for 70 years, becoming the longest reigning monarch in Thai history. But he never speaks publicly about that morning, never discusses what he thinks happened, never offers theories or explanations. The official record simply states the facts. The king died. A gun was found. Justice was served. But the whispers never stop. Some believe it was a genuine accident. A young man unfamiliar with firearms, handling a loaded weapon early in the morning, making a fatal mistake. Some think it was suicide. That the pressure of being king, of returning to a country he didn't know, of facing expectations he could never meet, became too much. Some are convinced it was assassination, that someone in the palace or someone with access to the palace decided Thailand needed a different kind of king, and a few very quietly suggest it was his brother, that Bhumibol wanted the throne and found a way to take it. There's no evidence for this last theory. None. But in a kingdom where speaking against the monarchy can land you in prison, evidence becomes difficult to gather. Even asking the wrong questions can be dangerous. Here's what we know for certain. The door was locked from the inside. The gun was his. The bullet came from that gun. Here's what we don't know. Why a left-handed king would shoot himself above his left eye, an angle that's almost impossible to achieve naturally. Why nobody heard the gunshot clearly in a palace full of servants and guards. Why his brother, sleeping in the next room, didn't wake up. Why the official investigation took so long to reach conclusions that satisfied nobody. The palace still stands in Bangkok. The room where he died is no longer used. Some say it's been sealed. Others claim it's just locked, preserved exactly as it was that morning. Nobody can confirm this because nobody's allowed inside to check. King Ananda's death is a reminder that in monarchies, secrets can wear crowns too. The truth becomes whatever version serves the kingdom best. For Thailand, that truth is carefully guarded. The official story stands. The king died tragically. Justice was served. The monarchy continued. But nearly 80 years later, historians still debate in careful language. Researchers still dig through archives looking for something that makes sense. And in Thailand itself, you don't discuss it. Not openly, not if you're wise, because some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. They're meant to be buried, locked away like that room in the palace, preserved in silence. One kingdom buried its secret to protect its future. But in the frozen north of Russia, another kingdom was about to bury something else entirely. Not a death, a life. A child born with royal blood, crowned as an emperor before he could walk, then locked away where nobody would ever see him again. For 24 years, he'll exist in darkness. No sunlight, no visitors, no name spoken aloud. And when someone finally tries to free him, the guards will have very specific orders about what to do, orders written decades earlier, waiting patiently for the moment they'd be needed. Number 8. Ivan VI. The boy Tsar. Nobody remembered. The night they kill him, every candle in Schlisselburg Fortress gutters at once. Guards will later report this to investigators, though nobody can explain it. The fortress sits on an island. There's no wind inside the stone corridors. But for just a moment, as the prisoner dies, the fortress goes completely dark. Then the candles flicker back to life. Behind one locked door, a man who was once Emperor of Russia bleeds out on cold stone. He's 23 years old. He's been a prisoner since he was a baby. For his entire conscious life, most of Russia has had no idea he existed. The year is 1740. Empress Anna dies without a direct heir. Russia needs an emperor. Fast. Her advisors look at the family tree and make a decision that borders on madness. They pick a baby, 2 months old. His name is Ivan. On October 17th, 1740, trumpets sound through St. Petersburg. Nobles bow to a cradle. Ivan the 6th Emperor and autocrat of all Russia. Age, 8 weeks. His mother becomes regent. She gets 13 months before Princess Elizabeth, daughter of Peter the Great, decides a baby emperor is an opportunity too good to waste. On November 25th, 1741, Elizabeth's guards storm the Winter Palace. They take the infant from his cradle and carry him into darkness. No trial, no announcement, just gone. By morning, Elizabeth is empress, and baby Ivan has vanished. Elizabeth makes a promise. She won't kill him, but he can never be seen again. Because in Russia, a forgotten Tsar is more dangerous than a dead one. Even a baby can become a rallying point for rebellion. So she erases him. His name is struck from prayers, his portraits burned. Speaking about him becomes treason, except he does exist. And that's the problem. Ivan is moved from prison to prison across Russia. First Riga, then the frozen fortress of Kolmogorye in the far north. Finally, when he's a teenager, he's transferred to Schlisselburg Fortress, a prison on an island in Lake Ladoga, the most secure prison in the empire, the place where secrets go to die. There he stays, year after year, while the world outside forgets he was ever born. The guards receive specific instructions: keep him alive, fed and sheltered. But never speak to him, never tell him who he is or why he's there. Some guards refuse the posting. They claim his cell is always cold, even in summer, that they hear him speaking in languages that don't exist. One guard serves 10 years, then goes blind within months of leaving. Doctors find nothing wrong with his eyes, they just stop working. The orders are written in Elizabeth's hand, but unsigned, as if she was afraid to claim them. 3 copies exist, one in the fortress, one in St. Petersburg, one burned after being read. And they specify something chilling. If anyone tries to rescue Ivan, kill him immediately. Then kill everyone who knows he existed. One more detail. A candle must burn beside his door at all times. Day and night, year after year. Nobody knows why. The candle at Schlisselburg never goes out. Not once. Guards replace it daily, but the flame never dies between changes. Ivan grows up in silence. By his 20s, guards report he speaks to people who aren't there. The empire forgets him, but in taverns, people still whisper about the lost Tsar. It's treason to repeat these stories. They tell them anyway. In 1762, Elizabeth dies and Catherine the Great takes power. She inherits an empire and one dangerous secret locked on an island. She makes the same calculation Elizabeth did. Too dangerous to release, too useful to kill. So she does nothing. For 2 more years, Ivan sits in his cell. Then, in summer 1764, strange things start happening. Doors found unlocked, footsteps in empty corridors. A young officer named Vasily Mirovich has been having dreams. A prisoner calling to him, begging to be freed. 3 other officers report the same dreams. On July 5th, 1764, Mirovich storms the fortress with soldiers, determined to free the lost emperor. Every dog in the surrounding villages starts howling. They don't stop until dawn. When Mirovich reaches Ivan's cell, the guards are already moving. They've been waiting over 20 years for this moment, ever since those sealed orders arrived. As the door breaks open, they follow their instructions. If anyone tries to rescue Ivan, kill him first. They stab him multiple times. Efficient, thorough. Ivan doesn't fight. Maybe he doesn't understand. Maybe after all those years, nothing feels real anymore. Mirovich is still shouting about liberation when Ivan dies. Guards report the candle beside his door flickered violently as he died, fighting wind that wasn't there. Then it steadied, still burning. When they carry his body out, the candle is still lit. It will burn for 3 more days before anyone extinguishes it. Catherine orders silence. Ivan's death gets 2 sentences in the official record. His grave is never marked. Mirovich is executed. Before he dies, he recants everything. Says there was no prisoner, just an empty room and shadows. The 3 guards who killed Ivan, all dead within the year. Fever, accident, suicide. The fortress commander goes mad, insisting someone's still in the cell. He dies in an asylum, still asking guards to check on the prisoner. When they clean Ivan's cell months later, they find words carved into stone, scratched with fingernails over years. "Who am I?" repeated hundreds of times. People whisper anyway. Was the prisoner really Ivan? Had he been switched as a child? Some claim the true Tsar was hidden somewhere safe, and they killed the wrong boy. No evidence exists. But in Russia, absence of evidence means nothing. Ivan VI spent his entire conscious life in prison, never knowing freedom, never understanding why he was locked away, never knowing he'd once worn a crown. Schlisselburg is a museum now. That particular cell, closed to visitors. Structural concerns, they say. In 2003, a historian requested Catherine's sealed documents about Ivan. Request denied. No explanation. Nearly 300 years later, Russia still isn't ready to tell this story. In the frozen silence of that fortress, Ivan VI achieved a strange kind of immortality. Not through power, but through mystery. The boy emperor who became a ghost. Far from Russia's frozen prisons, in the highlands of Ethiopia, another emperor was about to face something stranger, not locked away where people could forget him. Visible, present, sitting on his throne, except he wasn't speaking anymore, wasn't moving. For years his court would pretend, ministers would bow to an empty shell. The empire would take orders from a man who'd already stopped being there. How long can you pretend an emperor is alive when everyone can see he isn't? Number 9. Menelik II. the emperor who died in silence. For 3 years, the Empire of Ethiopia is ruled by a dead man, or at least that's what some historians believe, because nobody can agree on when Emperor Menelik II actually dies. 1910, 1911, 1913? The palace keeps changing its story. In the highlands of Ethiopia, where the air thins and prayers echo for miles, there once rules a man whose silence becomes legend. He's called Menelik, conqueror, modernizer, emperor. His greatest mystery isn't in the wars he wins, but in the years when nobody sees him at all. The year is 1889. Menelik II ascends the throne of Ethiopia, uniting a kingdom divided by warlords and invaders. He's not content to rule the old way. He builds roads, founds a capital, opens schools, and welcomes foreign advisors. He sees the world changing around him, and he refuses to let Ethiopia be conquered by it. Then, in 1896, at the Battle of Adwa, his army does something that shocks the entire world. They defeat the Italians. It's one of the few times in modern history an African force triumphs over a European power. Gunpowder hangs over the valleys of Adwa. The smell of incense clings to his letters of peace. The guns fall silent, and Ethiopia stands unbroken beneath a sky of smoke and sun. But here's what makes Menelik different from other conquering emperors. He doesn't just defeat Italy. He makes them respect him. Within years, European powers are treating Ethiopia as an equal, not a colony. He's invited to international conferences. His opinions matter. For the first time in modern history, an African ruler sits at the table with European powers, and nobody questions his right to be there. That's his real victory. And it makes what happens next even more tragic. In May 1909, Menelik suffers a massive stroke. At least that's the official story. Some doctors at the time whisper it might not have been a stroke at all. His symptoms don't quite match. A European physician who examines him is expelled from Ethiopia immediately afterward and never speaks publicly about what he sees. Whatever the cause, Menelik's speech falters. His strength leaves him. He stares at the window where dawn still rises, though he no longer can. Here's where things get properly strange. The palace announces he's recovering and will return to full duties soon, but here's what they don't tell anyone. If Menelik dies right now, before a clear succession is established, Ethiopia could tear itself apart. Rival claimants circle. European powers watch, ready to exploit any weakness. Civil war feels inevitable. So a small council, maybe 5 people total, makes a decision. They'll rule in Menelik's name until they can figure out what to do next. Weeks turn into months, months into years. The drums still beat at dawn as though he still greets the day. Visitors bow to an empty chair. Ministers kneel before a closed door. The sound of knees against marble becomes the anthem of his absence. But outside the palace, diplomats are getting suspicious. By 1911, foreign embassies in Addis Ababa are sending coded telegrams to their governments, all asking the same question. Is he actually still alive? Some embassies quietly evacuate non-essential personnel, preparing for potential chaos. A British diplomat writes in his private journal, "I have not seen the emperor in 18 months. Neither has anyone I trust. Yet the palace insists he reviews all state documents personally. Either he is the most reclusive monarch in history, or something rather troubling is happening behind those walls." Here's what makes this genuinely eerie. From leaked documents found decades later, we know only 5 people in the entire palace knew the emperor was already gone. Everyone else, from guards to advisors, genuinely believed he was recovering. The circle of silence was that tight. And when a chambermaid accidentally enters his room and sees the truth, she disappears from palace records entirely, reassigned to a distant province, supposedly. but no one can find documentation of where she went. Then people start seeing things. Palace guards report a figure in white robes walking slowly between the trees in the gardens at night. Always alone, always silent. But the guards swear the emperor hasn't left his chambers in years. 3 different priests who don't know each other report the same detail. They hear footsteps inside Menelik's private chapel. The footsteps stop at exactly 4:47 a.m. every single morning. That's the precise time Menelik used to wake for morning prayers when he was healthy. Coincidence? Probably. But the priests don't think so. Some refuse to enter the chapel before dawn. One caretaker in the early months claims he sees a figure in white robes standing near the palace entrance at sunrise. When he approaches, it vanishes. He quits the next day and never returns. The palace becomes a theater of elaborate pretense. Officials deliver reports to closed doors. Proclamations are issued in his name. The empire continues to function as if their emperor is simply resting. But everyone can feel it. Something is wrong. The man who made Ethiopia believe in itself is slipping away, and they're not ready to let him go. The official announcement comes on December 12, 1913. But here's what's strange. When the announcement finally comes, it's almost anticlimactic. As if the whole city has been holding its breath for so long, it forgot how to exhale. Ethiopia mourns what it has already lost. The man who made them believe in themselves. But the announcement doesn't bring closure. It brings more questions. How long was he actually gone? Days? Weeks? Months? Years? Did he die naturally, or did someone decide it was time? Was the council protecting Ethiopia, or protecting their own power? The historical record goes suspiciously vague at exactly the moment you'd expect clarity. They build him a tomb of black marble, sealed behind heavy iron doors. At night, priests say they hear footsteps inside. The echoes come and go with the wind, but the priests still cross themselves. It's probably just the building settling, stone expanding and contracting with temperature changes. But the priests who tend the tomb don't think so. Some refuse to go near it after sunset. Menelik once said that no one could rule Ethiopia forever, except its soul. His successor, Empress Zewditu, rules quietly under his shadow, as if he's still guiding her hand. Even today, some Ethiopians believe the emperor never truly died, only withdrew into eternity, that his spirit still watches over the highlands, ensuring Ethiopia remains free. It sounds like legend, but legends don't persist for over a century unless they're touching something real. Some collective need to believe that the man who saved Ethiopia is still, somehow, standing guard. In 2008, Ethiopian historians petitioned to open Menelik's tomb for scientific study. To settle the questions once and for all, the government refuses. No explanation given. Nearly a century later, Ethiopia still isn't ready to disturb his rest. Or perhaps they're not ready for what they might find. Menelik's reign begins with battle cries and ends with whispers. In life, he gives Ethiopia a voice. In death, he gives it faith. He proves that an African nation can stand against European empires and win, that modernization doesn't require surrender, that Ethiopia's independence is worth fighting for, worth dying for, worth remembering forever. But perhaps the most powerful thing he does is show that a leader's legacy isn't measured in years on the throne. It's measured in what the people believe long after the throne is empty. Some secrets aren't buried. They wait. But in a fortress across the sea, on a different continent entirely, another royal mystery is unfolding. One that will haunt a nation for centuries. 2 young boys, heirs to the English throne, are about to vanish into stone. In the heart of London stands a fortress older than most of its kings. This ancient fortress has kept secrets for 1,000 years. but none so heavy as the fate of these two missing brothers. They vanish without a trace, locked inside the tower's walls. And though centuries have passed, the stones have never stopped whispering their names. Number 10. The Princes in the Tower, Two Shadows in Stone. Two boys walk into the Tower of London in 1483. They never walk out. And 500 years later, nobody can prove what happened to them. The Tower of London is a fortress in the heart of the city. It's older than most of England's kings, and it's kept secrets for 1,000 years. But none so heavy as the fate of two missing boys. They're brothers, heirs to the English throne, and they vanish without a trace. The stones still whisper their names, even now. The year is 1483. King Edward IV dies unexpectedly. His eldest son, 12-year-old Edward, becomes King Edward V. But here's the problem. He's just a child, too young to rule on his own. So his uncle Richard steps in. Richard is appointed Lord Protector, which basically means he's supposed to look after his nephew and run the country until the boy's old enough to take over. He's sworn to protect Edward, to keep him safe. But oaths can change meaning when a crown is up for grabs. Edward and his younger brother, 10-year-old Richard, are taken to the Tower of London. Now, this sounds sinister to modern ears, but at the time it's actually normal. The Tower isn't just a prison. It's also a royal palace where kings traditionally stay before their coronation. So at first everything seems fine. Letters come from the boys. Cheerful ones. They're playing. They're waiting for the coronation. Then the letters stop. Witnesses see them playing in the garden that summer. Two boys kicking a ball around, laughing in the sunlight, completely unaware that the world is about to forget them. A priest sees them through a window in late July. Playing chess. A guard spots them in early September, waving at birds. The last person who claims to see them is a guard in late September. He watches them playing with toy soldiers. 3 days later, he checks the same window. The room is empty. The toys are gone. Even the dents in the mattresses have been smoothed away. It's like someone's erased them. Rain falls that autumn, darkening the courtyard stones where the boys once played. By October, the windows where they used to wave stand dark and empty. London starts whispering. Something's wrong. Here's what makes this truly sinister. The compounds where the boys are staying are locked. Only a handful of people have keys. Their guards, their servants, and their Uncle Richard. So if someone murders them, it isn't a stranger breaking in. It's someone they know, someone they trust, someone who has every right to be there. Meanwhile, Uncle Richard moves fast. He declares that his dead brother's marriage was never valid. And if the marriage wasn't legal, the boys were born out of wedlock, which means legally they can't inherit the throne. Convenient, isn't it? On July 6th, 1483, Uncle Richard is crowned King Richard III. The boys are probably still alive at this point. People are still claiming to see them in the Tower Gardens. Then the sightings stop. Just stop. No announcement, no funeral, no explanation whatsoever. London falls silent. Not the peaceful kind of silence, the terrified kind. Nearly 200 years pass. It's 1674. Workmen are repairing the oldest part of the tower. They're digging beneath a staircase when their shovels hit something solid. A wooden box. They pry it open. Inside, wrapped in rotting velvet, are the bones of 2 children. Small bones, child-sized skulls. And underneath them, scraps of fabric that might once have been royal purple, the colour only royalty were allowed to wear. For a moment, even London seems to hold its breath. Are these the long-lost princes, or just some other family's forgotten children? The tower's been standing for 6 centuries. Plenty of people have died there. King Charles II orders the remains placed in Westminster Abbey, the grand church where kings and queens are crowned and buried. They're put in a special urn bearing the princes' names, but there's no proof these bones actually belong to the boys. In 1933, scientists finally examined the bones. They determine the children are roughly the right age, 10 to 13 years old. The facial structure suggests siblings, but 1930s technology isn't good enough to be certain. Here's what makes this absolutely maddening. We have the technology today. Right now, we could extract DNA from those bones, compare it to living descendants of the royal family, and know for certain. The equipment exists. The expertise exists. The answer is literally sitting in a marble urn in Westminster Abbey. But the Church of England says no. They won't allow DNA testing. They won't say why. Just no. So here we sit, 500 years later, with the answer locked away, and nobody's allowed to open the box and look. So what actually happened to the princes? Theory 1. King Richard III ordered them killed. He's got motive, means, and opportunity. Shakespeare certainly thinks he's guilty. In his famous play, the ghosts of the two princes visit Richard in his nightmares, whispering, "Despair and die." But that's theatre, not history. And here's something interesting. In 2012, archaeologists found Richard III's actual skeleton buried under a car park. DNA proved it was really him. His skull had been smashed in, violently, after death. Someone hated him enough to mutilate his corpse. Was it guilt, or revenge for what people believed he'd done? Theory 2. The Duke of Buckingham did it. He's Richard's right-hand man and absurdly ambitious. Maybe he acted without orders. Or maybe with very quiet orders never written down. Theory 3. Henry VII killed them. He defeats Richard III in battle in 1485 and takes the throne. But those boys, if they're still alive, have a better claim to be king. So maybe Henry quietly eliminates the problem. Theory 4. They actually escaped. Some historians genuinely believe someone smuggled the boys out. They lived under fake names and died peacefully somewhere nobody's connected yet. Every explanation opens another question. Even now, Tower of London guards tell stories they won't put in official reports. Cold spots on hot summer days. Children's laughter echoing through empty corridors at midnight. Security cameras that glitch near one particular staircase. The same staircase where the bones were found. Tour guides don't spend too long in certain rooms because tourists start feeling uncomfortable. Just an odd feeling, like someone's watching. In 2015, a tourist photographs an empty staircase. When she looks at the image later, there are two small figures in old-fashioned royal clothing standing in the shadows. She deletes the photo immediately. Something happened in that tower, and whatever it was, it left a mark that 500 years hasn't erased. Here's what makes this mystery so haunting. Someone knows what happened. Someone gave the order. Someone physically killed two children. Someone buried their bodies. But 500 years later, we're still guessing. The Tower of London keeps its secrets better than any fortress in Europe. Those thick walls have absorbed centuries of screams, prayers, and final words. Two more children vanishing barely registers in all that dark history. Maybe that's the real horror. Not just that the princes died, but that their deaths were so casual to the people in power. Just two more obstacles removed, two more problems solved. The princes vanish, but their story lives on, echoing through stone, through plays, through ghost stories told in the dark. Some mysteries survive because they refuse to be solved. 10 English kings and queens have ruled since that summer. Yet none of them have silenced the question that began in 1483. Maybe that's why we still listen for voices in the silence, because every mystery is, at heart, a memory that refuses to rest. These 10 royal mysteries remind us of something important. Power, wealth, and crowns don't guarantee you'll be remembered fondly. Sometimes the questions you leave behind matter more than any answers. Tutankhamun and his curse, Cleopatra and her vanished tomb, Huang and his sealed palace, Nefertiti and her hidden chamber, Jahangir and his disappeared ruby throne, Ranavalona and her breathing palace, King Ananda and the locked room, Ivan and his forgotten cell, Menelik and his silent years, and these 2 princes in their tower, all of them powerful, all of them gone, all of them still haunting us across the centuries. Because the greatest mystery isn't how they died. It's why we can't stop searching for answers they'll never give us. 2 boys walked into the Tower of London in 1483. The stones remember what happened, even if we don't. And on quiet nights in London, when the tourists leave and the guards change shifts, some people swear they can still hear it. The sound of children playing, the sound of questions that will never be answered, the sound of a mystery that absolutely refuses to die. Sleep well, dear dreamer. Let these royal ghosts keep their secrets a little longer. After all, some mysteries are more beautiful when they stay unsolved. And tomorrow, when you wake, remember this. Even the mightiest rulers eventually become nothing more than whispers in stone, waiting patiently for someone to listen.